Hi, and thanks so much for joining us for this special webinar where Jaemin Frazer and I are going to put together all the exciting things we've learned from going over the some 30 episodes of the Coach Mentor podcast. We've learned a lot of things. At least 9 of them relate to business, and we're going to run a second webinar about the 9 things we've learned about having a good coaching practice or being a good coach. So in this particular webinar, we're just going to look at the excellent business principles we've learned. So principle number 1, we've called Who Are You on Your Best Day? Now this is a principle that we learned from Simon Reynolds in episode 25. That was one of my favourite ones. And what about you, Jamie?
It was incredible. I can still remember driving to Sydney. It was our wedding anniversary. My wife was asleep beside me, and I was listening to that on my phone while we're driving, and I was just bugging out to it. I thought it was just outstanding.
I particularly like the fact that Simon said we need to think about our own behaviour affecting the core of the company. And, you know, we have good days, we have bad days, and we're not really sure what the differences are or when we're like that. And one of the things he said in that podcast was you need to make it explicit. You need to think about who you are on your best day. And he just suggested thinking of the 3 things that make you like that on your best day, and then calibrate yourself back to that state. So maybe it was getting up early in the morning, maybe it was having a cup of coffee, going for a run, whatever it was, calibrate yourself back to that condition so that you keep bringing your best to your business. And the other thing that he said was, you know, realize that your business needs you to be at your best. Now, of course, we still have good days and bad days, but Simon is a very, very successful multiple millionaire businessman, and this is a great principle straight out of his own way of doing things. So I reckon it's a take home.
I love this one. This was so useful for me, and I found out that on my best day, I had really high levels of clarity about my plan, confidence about my ability to pull it off, and certainty about where I was heading into my future. And so making that explicit, and then in any moment on any day, just asking myself, how's my clarity, how's my certainty, how's my confidence, and what do I need to do to get it back to that high level, has just been such a useful thing about, you know, performing at my best in the business.
And you call that your C3 score now?
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely.
Beautiful. All right, so what's the second thing we learned?
So this came from Simon Reynolds again, and he just said, you know, at the end of the day, your ability to make business work will come back to your identity. It will come back to your own sense of security and what you believe about yourself, which I just thought is so cool, because as coaches, this is the place that we are playing in, and means that, you know, life coaches have plenty to offer in the business world, because business all comes back to identity. So some of the things that Simon said, and some of the things that we've really taken from that, is just the need to break free from attachments, this sense of external things propping us up, telling us that we're worthwhile and significant, you know, by our possessions or achievements or performance, and I suppose replacing external success, significance reference ones with internal success, significance reference points, so that there's not this sense of neediness and insecurity that's driving us. We're very centered and grounded, and ultimately, you know, when we look ourselves in the eye or in the mirror, we're able to tell ourselves that we're a good person doing the right thing, irrespective of what others are saying about us, and that's not up for grabs based on the rise or fall of what's happening around us. That sense of personal security and identity is really, really core to being able to survive in business long term. And I suppose following on from that, it's just this idea that you are not your business. So I've worked with so many business owners who are their business. They are defined by it. It is them, and so they take everything personally, and their ego and significance is intertwined with the rise and fall of that business. So I think the key is separating your identity from what you do. You are not what you do, and you are not your business. And being able to make that distinction means you're much more likely to be able to lead your business rather than manage it So yeah, I love that from Simon.
One of the people I would like to interview in the next year is Oren Claff, who wrote a book called Pitch Anything. And he really makes the same point Simon does about not referencing your own significance and success on external things. One of the things that creates is neediness. And neediness, will kill a sale quicker than anything. If you need your client, if you coach because you need them to, get successes, you're going to kill your own business.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. Number 3, Rob, what have we got next?
This was a principle of asking, what is your business model? So this is a question I've taken to asking most of my interviewees, but it came up in episode 29 with Chris Taylor. So I just said, listen, Chris, you travel the world, you get around, you live in a cave in Spain, you're about to move to, live in a treehouse in Panama, for God's sake. So what's your business model for pulling that off? And this is a really good challenge, because most of us, I guess the question is, do you have a business model? And Jaemin and I have really taken this to heart, because we did have a business model, and it got broken along the way, and we tried to fix it with 200-mile-an-hour tape, and it wasn't working. So the distinction here is between having a business and having a practice. So if you think about doctors, lawyers, accountants, when they work, there's a business, and when they don't work, there isn't a business. And that just isn't sustainable. It's not scalable, and it's not profitable. In the end, if you get burned out, your business is going to get burned out. So one of the questions that I asked Chris, and that he then provoked us to think about, was, do you have a business model? And I guess it's reminiscent of some stuff we've read from Michael Gerber, back in the day, the E-Myth manager. Are you have you bought yourself a job? So you've gone out and left an industry and you bought yourself a job, which is okay. If that's what you intended to do, that's fine.
Yeah,
but
that's
if you're
right.
running a coaching business,
if you want to be a technician, you want to be a coach, you want to be a trainer, great, be that. But if you have a business, well, understand that's a very different thing. Sorry, Rob.
That's absolutely. No, you're right. So, if you intended to run a business and you've got contractors and you want to have that thing go while you go off to Fiji for your holidays, that's a very different thing to a practice, a coaching practice. So the three S, or the three areas there: sustainable, scalable, profitable. I admit Chris didn't exactly say that. This is a principle we've borrowed, from a marketing model. But can it grow? Can it be sustained? And will it make money while you're still sleeping? So that was the third principle.
Yeah, that's great. Number 4, building multiple income streams. So this was Craig Rispin, and another podcast which I just so enjoyed. And one of the stories that he told around a business owner just paying him to be in the room without delivering any content or really doing much other than just being present, and the effect that had on his people was extraordinary. I just thought, again, just the power of coaching and just the space that coaching occupies. It draws out the best in people, and so beautiful. So, Craig's whole philosophy was, yeah, you're a coach, and that's great, but don't put all your eggs in one basket. So coaching is what's got you in the game and what you're good at, but you can also leverage other things off the back of that coaching. So that can also provide income. And maybe coaching might remain your main thing, but you can supplement that with a whole bunch of other things which are in similar fields and provide great value for people. So it wouldn't take much to take some of the key IP and write about it, to present some workshops where you're able to speak about it, to take people one-on-one and mentor them around the areas of expertise, consulting, training. All these things provide different buckets and sources of income to make it sustainable. So yeah, really love that from Craig.
And one of the key resources Craig pointed out too was Thought Leaders by Matt Church, which is a book I'd highly recommend our listeners get into and have a go at.
Great.
So the fifth principle is peak performance, and this is Ian Snape in episode 15. So who's going to cover this one, you or me, mate?
Well, let's both have a look at this. We actually got to go do some training with Ian in Hobart, and he's a remarkable guy and coaches elite athletes. He's got amazing peak performance individuals in business and sport, and his whole philosophy was around, it's two pronged basically. It's getting well formed outcomes and developing a high performance state that enables you to achieve those well formed outcomes. So in terms of business development, this operates two ways. For the individual business owner or business team, your peak performance state is very, very important to be able to maximize the efficiency of your business, but also thinking about the well-formed outcomes for your business, not sloppy, loose, abstract goals, but very specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, ecological, resource, time-bound outcomes, and then work out who you need to be to achieve those. And because bottom line, if you can get well-formed outcomes and then a high-performance state, you can realize that if you can control your state, you can control your outcomes.
Talk us through ecological again, because this is something that sometimes people struggle with. So we've made a decision about the outcomes. We've got clear, we've got specific.
It's just to realize that the decisions that we make and the goals that we strive for have a cost to them and have an effect on our world. So the ecological part of it, is this a goal that's good for me and good for my world? Or is this a goal that's only referencing how it will affect me? We don't live in a vacuum. We live very connected in ecosystems. And so this is taking a step back and a more global view of the goal that we're setting to see, are we aware of the costs and impacts, both and the positives and negatives around that? And once being aware of that, are we still happy to go ahead with that goal, or would we like to make some changes?
Beautiful. So point number 6, strategic thinking. So this is a killer application for business owners and managers. I took this from Jim Wallace. The entire episode 13 was called Strategic Thinking. One of the things Jim brought out of his army background was just the idea that there are 3 levels. There's a practical level out there on the battlefield, the soldier. There's a tactical level. How do we support that soldier? What are the systems? What's the kind of theatre of war that we're operating in? And then there's the strategic level of thinking. So that's generally, in his world, global, political, governmental, environmental. So in business, though, if you think about the daily grind, if you think about the business systems that support the contractors and the people and the clients that you're seeing, there's a whole nother level of thinking to go in behind that, is the strategic thinking. What is my environment? What is my competition? What is the economy doing? What are the trends in coaching? How am I going to prepare myself for the future? Those things. So another issue that Jim raised, was the issue of commander's intent. So again, in the army, this is the soldier on the battlefield needs to be able to say to himself, what is the commander's intent? What does the general want here? Now, the general never said, go take that hill. He said, I want to win the war with Vietnam. So to do that, we're going to have to fly B-52 bombers in, and to do that, we're going to have to go take this city. Well, again, on the ground, we have to interpret our commander's intent. So does your business have a strategic intent? Who are you? Why are you in business? What are you trying to accomplish? So what is the organisational strategic intent? And if you've got a company like ours, where we've got, a core team of 5, a staff of 7, and, up to 35 contractors, do they even know what the organisational intent is and how they're going to play that out on the ground when they're in front of a client with your name attached to their work?
I really like this, the practical, tactical, strategical, and they may be in the wrong order, because I've really enjoyed getting my head around the fact that strategic is the big picture and needs to be addressed first. Often we're making practical decisions and practical thinking where we haven't really got clear on the overall strategy. So that the big picture strategy. What is our overall strategy that we're trying to achieve? Okay, now what are the tactics that we're going to employ to achieve that strategy? Now on the ground, what's the practical thinking we're going to do to apply those tactics? So I found that a really useful way of making decisions and coming up with plans that are day to day, rather than just doing stuff and just being practical. The practical is connected to the strategic.
Brilliant.
So number 7 is managing the needs of stakeholders. This is Anne White, episode 21. And I found this really interesting because, in a business, sometimes you can think the only ones who have a vested interest are business owners or the team, but that's far from true. There are lots of people that have a vested interest in the running of the business. So, firstly, there are internal stakeholders. So there are owners, there are staff, there are contractors. Then there are external stakeholders, which are investors and clients. And then thinking about every client has stakeholders. So each client that we service has people that have a vested interest in how the client is performing. So, for instance, we have clients that are employment agencies, but each employment agency has clients that they are servicing. So just being aware of the complexity of all parties and coordinating that so that everybody wins, rather than just imagining it's just about your own interest. I found that really useful as a big picture way for operating business.
And if we had the time to squeeze another principle in, we would have slotted John Raymond from episode 24 in here, because he raised the issue of coaching through complexity and how organisational agendas get affected, and indeed how our coaching moves and alters the very culture and fabric of the organisation we're involved in coaching. So, that's another layer of complexity there.
Yeah, great.
So number 8, understanding your competitive environment. Really enjoyed this one. Often people work their way backwards through the Coach Mentor podcast, and so you may not have come across Babette Ben-Susan, brilliant thinker, strategic lady and one of the most highly published business authors in Australia. She talked to us about understanding your competitive environment, and she gave a number of really key pieces of advice in that episode. One of them was that we needed to join industry groups. We need to get involved in the coaching industry to hear what's going on. That can involve getting, say, for example, if you're part of the ICF, getting the CoachLink magazine, reading overseas magazines like Coach World or the International Coaching News, getting on websites, reading current research papers. So again, if you haven't come across Paul Lawrence or Anne White, you can see some of the research from Whiteco. So all of this goes into you understanding your strategic environment and where you fit. She also talked about word of mouth. So being part of those industry groups, networking events, getting on the phone, talking to your organisation, say in the ICF. Do you know who your local chapters are? Have you turned up to any of their situations? Do you sit down and talk to other coaches? Word of mouth moves around pretty quickly. And the other thing she said was gather information, read the news, receive news if you can via broadcast. Make sure that you know what the latest research papers are from overseas. For example, the ICF put out a big piece of research every 2 years, usually 2006, 2009, 2012, every 3 years roughly. So they're going to do another one this year. So do you read them? Are you bothering to find out what's going on? For example, Babette pointed out that the coaching industry has been the fastest growing industry in Australia for 3 years running, and that it continues to grow at 9% compound every year. There's over 50,000 coaches internationally now, and it continues to grow. So, the competition's on. And where do you sit among 50,000 coaches? Who are you? What are you offering? How is it different? What's your unique selling point? And all of those good pieces of marketing advice. So in on the homeward straight now, mate. Number 9.
It's easier to be a global coach than a local one. Now, I heard Taki Moore say this some time back, and then I heard Chris Taylor say that on episode 29, and it really reminded me of what Taki'd said. I just love this idea. And, the philosophy behind it is, if you're a local coach and you put up a sign in your backyard or your front yard advertising that you get great results for people while you're pitching to quite a small market, the likelihood of you being able to sustain that business as opposed to pitching to a global audience, it's very slim. So the cool thing about being having a global mindset is that there's no barrier to entry. There's nothing. So with the way that the internet is, you have access to everything that you need to get started to provide solutions to people. So this idea relates to the idea of having a business model rather than you just being a coach. So if you're about providing product and services that's scalable, sustainable and profitable that can exist outside of you, well then if you can make that resource available online, well then anyone in the world can access it. So you're able to provide solutions to people's problems wherever there are problems and people, which is everywhere around the world. So such an exciting concept, and amazing watching people set up businesses that generate income for them while they're asleep, because people on the other side of the world are getting great value from it because it's sat on a website, it's made available online, and they can access it. So very cool concept.
Beautiful. So as we sort of bring the webinar to a close, and we're going to share some other information with you, I just want to again point out to you that going back over the 30 sessions that we've done, the 30 podcasts, there are two big themes that come out. The 9 that we've shared with you today are business principles that have come out of those interviews. And we're going to do another webinar shortly about the coaching principles that come out, how to be a good practitioner, how to be a better coach. So we'll bring another 9 points oriented around that. But let's talk about those two essential components and how they go together for you as a coach.
Yeah, and that's right, because it's not going to be enough just to be a great coach. If you have no idea how to market yourself or build business, well, then you could be the best coach in the world and no one finds out about you. And it's not just going to be good enough to be outstanding at business and winning clients and marketing yourself if when you land a client, you have no idea how to coach them. So both aspects need to be developed simultaneously so that the business is sustainable. But watching people's approach to this in the coaching industry, it is a growth industry, like you said, Rob. People are joining this industry by the truckloads because it's so exciting and so compelling, and there's no barrier to entry. It's fantastic, but depending upon the natural strength, someone might be a great coach, but the way they approach business is with anxiety and avoidance. So I was like, I don't know how to do business, so I'll just pretend it doesn't matter and feel anxious about it and avoid it. Or I'm great at business, but I'll just avoid developing my coaching muscle and pretend like it doesn't matter. So I think both those two strategies are highly problematic and not sustainable if you want to grow a successful coaching business. So that's part of the reason that Rob has put together this great podcast, bringing together resources from around the world around how to build great business and how to become a great coach. We've also put together some resources that help this very thing, furthering from the Coach Mentor podcast, and helping individuals accelerate and fast track their own success by building their business and developing their ability as a coach. We've called it Accelerate. It's a really cool product. I reckon it's Rob and I at our best, and stealing the best bits from the best coaches and business people in the world, as this podcast demonstrates. So it's a really exciting program. The link is there. If you want to find out more information about it, you're able to click on that. There'll be a link straight under this video on the website page. And 3 levels of interaction. We've got a great program where you can just access the training videos and some exercises that you can work your way through, self-paced, and step that out. If you feel like you'd like some more interaction, Then we can give you some personalized feedback. That's a second level of interaction. And that includes a group call, a group kind of mentoring call. And then obviously, Rob and I are available for one-on-one mentoring if you're really looking to fast track that whole process. Anything you want to add there, Rob?
Yeah, just to say, it's a pleasure and it's an honour and a privilege to talk to these amazing people. And I'm looking forward to the next year and the next 30 interviews that we're going to do with amazing people. Having a yarn to Chris Taylor and thinking about how to do summaries. I hope that you've noticed that we've started putting up transcripts from the podcast. These act as a kind of a background to Frazer Holmes coaching at our best. So we've offered this podcast for free to the internet, to the industry, and then we groom and take and learn from all of that and put it into the Coach Mentor product to accelerate your business. We just want to see you succeed and do well.
Absolutely. Well, that's all from us. Like Rob said, we're running a second webinar all about the 9 things we've learned about becoming an outstanding coach to go alongside this. So stay tuned for that and keep listening out for the great interviews that Rob will be bringing you each fortnight.